Hello, and once again welcome to QubaHQ tutorials. My name is Kuba Michalski, and yes, I know I've been absent for quite a while. Now, if you've been following my site, you probably know why. I've been busy as hell. I've directed this thing, and then this thing, and then another thing which is not on the site right now. I made one independent piece, another one, I cut myself a new reel. In other words, I've been working pretty much non-stop. To make up for this prolonged absence, I have something really special for you today. It is my pleasure to introduce the QubaHQ Stop Motion Toolkit. Or a Stop Motion Kit, I don't remember what I called it. Yes, Stop Motion Kit. Now, you may remember a while ago I did this commercial in which I simulated the stop motion aesthetic using animation done in After Effects. And I pretty much had to do it because of two main reasons. One was the timing. We simply did not have the time in the studio to shoot all the scenes in front of the camera. Second was the storyboard itself. Doing this many coins standing on their backs would be pretty much a nightmare. I remember it took us quite a while to even shoot sample coins for this scene and making them stand properly and not topple over. Additionally, there was this other scene with a trumpet, which I believe uses something around 200 different coins, and again, animating it in front of the camera would be quite time-taking. So I decided to move all the pipeline into After Effects and animate it there. Now, if you think of what really creates that stop motion aesthetic, it's the little imperfections in the animation that occur every now and then and make it look more real, more believable than a typical computer-generated animation. Doing all these little imperfections with keyframes, not really my style. So I decided to develop a little script to help me out, and it really helped me out tremendously on this commercial. And today I would like to share it with you. Now, I polished it up, made it really easy to use by anyone, and it's free for download together with this tutorial. Now, if you're watching this on Vimeo, check the description below this video. There should be a link to my website from which you can download the preset. And if you're watching it on QubaHQ, well, you know where to look. Once you've downloaded it, you should end up with the following folders. You will have the presets folder and QHQ stop motion kit. Now, inside of the stop motion kit is the After Effects project. It's CS3 compatible, so you can use any version from CS3 and up. And of course, it contains some footage. Where do I have it? Piece of paper saying tutorials, QubaHQ.com. A paper texture for the background, as well as a sequence of images with a coin. This is a 50 kurush coin. Kurush is pretty much an equivalent of cent in Turkish currency. What else? You have, of course, the presets folder, and inside yet another stop motion kit and 6 presets which you need to install before starting this tutorial. To install them, you just copy them to your After Effects presets folder. Depending on your operating system, on the version of After Effects you're using, it can be in different locations. On PC, it's usually under either My Documents, Adobe, or under Program Files, or both. You can put it wherever you want. Now, once you install your files, you're pretty much good to go. Right, so here we are inside of After Effects, and I already have the preset installed, and on my computer it sits inside of the Animation Presets, QubaHQ, right next to other presets you may be familiar with from my previous tutorials. Here it is, Stop Motion Kit. If I untwirl it right now, we'll see the 6 effects that make up this kit. Now, if you don't feel like navigating through the folder structure, there is a much easier way of accessing it. Simply type QHQ in your search box and that should show you all 6 effects. Now, you may notice I'm using After Effects CS5 for this tutorial. It doesn't really matter. The project file you're gonna be using is made in CS3, so it's gonna be compatible with older versions. And the only thing, as usual, that you will have to take care of is the naming conventions. Now, that's because all my presets are made out of expressions rather than being proper plugins. So unfortunately, the conventions is something you have to bear with, but I think it's a small price to pay for all the goodness you're going to see in just a moment. The kit consists of three main parts. You have QubaHQ stop motion, which is your main controller, and you will always have to use it in order to apply any effects. And this is where all the main settings are going to be organized. You have the second part, which is QubaHQ glitch camera, and that allows you to basically make composition-wide changes to the way the camera behaves. So you can add some extra movement, extra errors in exposure and stuff like that. And you have four glitchers, let's say, which allow you to introduce errors into position, rotation, and time of the layer. But I'm sure you had enough of theory by now. Let's actually put this thing to the test. So, I see in the previous recording I already created something and I had to delete it. Never mind. Let's put a white solid in a composition and do a super simple animation on it. So, let's scale it down to 50%. Move it to the left of the screen. Keyframe position, a bit more space maybe, keyframe position in here, and move it to the right, ease the keyframes, boom, okay? Super simple, nothing special. And looks like a typical After Effects animation you may be doing at any time. Now, in order to introduce the stop motion kit to the equation, we need to start with an adjustment layer. And that adjustment layer should preferably sit on the very top of your composition. So let's create a new adjustment layer, and we're going to be applying QubaHQ stop motion to it. And if you remember the naming conventions I mentioned a little bit earlier, this is when they come into play. You have to name this layer exactly the same as the effect you're going to be applying to it. So let's rename it to QubaHQ stop motion, and please be aware of the capitalization of the letters. And with that layer selected, we double click on the stop motion. And immediately we get some settings in the effect controls panel. The first thing you will notice is, if I expand it, you will see it on this one, and you will also see it on the glitch camera. Some of the effects are gonna have this automatic text written in it. That basically indicates that you don't need to animate it, that this is being driven by expressions. Normally I would try to put them at the bottom of the stack, but for some reason posterized time effect does some really weird stuff if I do so, so I have to keep it on top of the stack. So let's just hide it. We're not gonna be needing to worry about that. First controller you're going to see is the frame rate, and that's a very simple frame limiter. So if we look at our animation right now, I just need to click here before I preview, you'll see that right now it's more skippy than it was. It runs at 10 frames a second. You can of course lower it to whatever value you want. This is 3 frames a second. A staple of any stop motion animation. Nobody's gonna be crazy enough to run it at 25 or 30 frames a second. I'm gonna keep it at 10 because it's a pretty good value. It works well with both PAL and NTSC formats, and I think 10 or 12, sometimes 15 is very typical for stop motion animation. Second controller and third one, minimum speed and maximum speed. That's the heart of the effect. If you think about stop motion, what you're gonna do is you put the camera on a tripod, face it at, let's say, a desk, and you move objects about. As you move them, especially if you have a large number of them, it's pretty hard to maintain perfect paths of the movement. So when you move it from one place to another, some errors are introduced. You know, the object moves a bit to the left, a bit to the right, maybe rotates a little bit. But once it comes to a stop, once it reaches destination and you animate some other things, it's not very likely that it's going to be moving around unless you really mess up, you know, make it fall over, etc. So how this kit works is it analyzes the speed at which the objects move around the canvas, and the faster they move, the more chance they get that an error will occur and it's going to end up in a wrong position. So you can define the minimum speed at which it occurs and the maximum one, as well as what's going to happen to those objects. So as I said earlier, you have a chance to shift frames. That's for time remapping, and we're gonna talk about it a little later. You can shift the rotation and the position of the object. Now, we know that the object moves the fastest in the middle in here, but right now I can change it as much as I want, nothing's gonna happen. And that's because I didn't apply the effect to the layer itself yet. So let's do it. Let's select our white solid and let's start with the position. So I'm gonna locate QubaHQ stop motion glitch position, and with the layer selected, double click it. And if I untwirled my position in here right now, you're going to see that it generated expression inside. We know the effect is applied. So what can we do with it right now? Since our original value is at 0, let's just have a look at it one more time. This is how it looks without any glitching. Pretty simple. And as we increase shift position, it starts moving around. So let's set it at, let's say, 50 pixels. And if I animate it right now, you'll see that it randomly jumps about as it moves, but then after it comes to a complete stop, it does not do that anymore. So I think 50 is a bit excessive in here. Let's lower it to 20. Subtlety is the key to making convincing animations. And this is starting to look pretty good. Let's do something to the rotation as well. Select our layer once again. Locate the glitch rotation, and you can see we have two of them. We have glitch rotation as well as glitch rotation and randomize. Now, glitch rotation is going to simply add a bit of noise to the movement of the object. Glitch rotation and randomize is going to rotate it into random direction and then add the glitch on top of it. Let's start with the simple one. Double click on it. Let's just make sure it got applied. Yep, we can see that there is expression on the rotation. And again, we need to increase the value in here. So shift rotation, let's give it, let's say, 5 degrees. And you can see it already rotated a little bit. If we animate it again, you can see it turns around as it moves and then comes back. Now, of course, if you so desire, you can go crazy. You can apply a really high value to it, and it's gonna change that value, wiggle a bit about as it moves, and then come back to the original position. I think 5 degrees was just fine, just enough error that an animator would not notice when animating stop motion, but it's there for the careful viewer to observe. So let's also have a look at this glitch rotation and randomize effect. Once again, select our white solid, double click on this one, and you can see that right from the beginning it rotated the object, and it's basically going to maintain this rotation and add extra errors as it moves around. So if we scrub through the timeline, maybe I should remove the position so we can see it easier. Let's put it at 0. It actually doesn't seem to be doing much. I just zeroed the rotation instead of position. 0 position, change rotation to something like 80. Okay, it's happening, but it's not very strong. If we just look at the rotation on the graph, you're going to see that it is actually introducing errors, but since it's random, it's impossible to tell when this is going to occur. So you can, of course, just increase the value a lot, and then it's gonna be much more visible, or keep it subtle and just hope that with many elements on the screen, some of them are gonna be introducing errors more than the others. Now, this randomize effect applies different rotation to any layer you would create. So if I right now duplicate this, you'll see that it's already in a different rotation, and maybe I can just move it up a little bit, make another copy, move this one down, make another copy, move it down as well. Do we still have space? Yes. Okay, so you can see to every object you apply this effect, the original rotation is going to be different. If you want all of them to have the rotation as you designed it, simply apply glitch rotation. the one without randomizer. Again, randomize, very easy to apply. Let's increase our position shift back to, let's say, 30. And now you're going to see that each of those objects is going to move in a different way. So some of them wiggle more, some less, but all of them only do it when they are in motion. Maybe it would be easier to see if I increase frame rate back to 25. Of course, I don't do it from here, I do it from here, 25. Okay. Yeah, so at the full frame rate you can see that the glitching is quite apparent. We can also increase the rotation and see that our objects are randomized. The faster they move, the more of that effect gets applied. Now let's have a look at the glitch time concept, and for that I'm going to import the image sequence that we have in our demo. So that would be in the stop motion kit footage coin, import it as TIFF sequence, come back to the main screen. We're gonna use pre-multiplied with black, and here's our coin. And a good thing to do in here is create a longer loop. So what we can do in here is basically go to interpret footage main, come back to the main screen, and loop it, let's say 20 times. Once we looped it, let's pre-compose it and then drop it into our comp. So in here we have a fairly long composition that basically has a rotating coin in it, right? Okay. Again, we need to create our controllers. So let's start with the stop motion. New adjustment layer, QubaHQ stop motion. Apply the effect. Hide the automatic setting, and we're in the game. Now again, it's not gonna do anything until we start moving it about. The objects laying dormant don't glitch out. Now the main problem you can see already is that it keeps on spinning like crazy. If I play it back, it's rotating really fast. This can be remedied by freezing the time on it, but you don't need to do it manually. The glitch time is gonna do it for you. So let's just apply it. Select the coin, double click glitch time, and you will see that right away it chose a random frame from the sequence and rotated it, or actually, it rotates inside, resulting in a coin rotated randomly. Let's do the same thing we did with the cubes. Let's scale it down a tiny bit. Move it to the top. Give it maybe 10 frames of lead time. Keyframe position. Go a second ahead or so. Move it to the right. Trim our composition. F9 it. So if we play it back, wow, it's moving really fast, so it's hard to see. None of the glitches are applied yet, except for the glitching time, which at the moment only does the rotation. That's the original one. It's pretty much the equivalent of glitch rotation and randomize. If we go to the settings right now, what we can do is we can increase the value of shift frame. So let's do 5 in here, and you can see the coin already rotated. And I think I need to do this animation a bit slower, otherwise it's gonna be really hard to see. Let's try to preview it right now. Okay, it's all a blur, so let's just go slowly frame by frame, maybe hide the helpers. There you go, you can see it happening. This is our original rotation, and as it moves around, where is that spot? There you go. It shifted the frame, resulting in the object rotation. Now it's gonna keep on doing that, rotating a couple of times. Here's quite an extreme one, and then come back to its original frame. So it's the same as the opening one. And again, if we create a bunch of those, and this time I can just offset the anchor point to create copies. You can see that each copy does its own rotation. And as we animate them, wow, it's really difficult to see. Shiny objects on black. And you can see that they randomly switch the frames they are using, but never going too far. So it basically creates an illusion of the object rotating. You may ask, why don't I just use glitch rotation and randomize? Well, that's because all those photos are shot with the light coming from the left top corner, so I always want to have a shine on this side. And if I just rotated the object, the shine would go all around as the object rotates around. So again, if we want to increase the position glitch, just select all the objects, double click glitch position, and increase it in the controller. So shift position, let's say 30, and we're starting to get much more believable stop motion like movement. So these are the controllers for the objects. Now on top of that we have the glitch camera, which I'm gonna show you right now. So if I just put a camera on top of these objects on top of the black void, we're not going to really understand much of what's happening. So let's create some background really quickly. Gonna make a new solid. I'm gonna do pretty much the same thing I did in the ad. Tried and ready. Orange color for the background. Let's go to the bottom. On top of that, I can put a bit of a vignette, and I think I have a nice preset for that as well. Let's just increase the brightness in here, change it to overlay, make it a bit more transparent, 50, and add some paper texture on top so we can actually see the motion. So this is my paper texture. Let's just drop it on top. This is a good trick actually. If you want to apply paper textures, I usually use the overlay mode at relatively low opacity. So let's say 30. That may be hard to see on the video, so I'm just gonna bump it up to 75. If you want to do that and you want it to look realistic, actually it should be under the vignette. The trick of achieving it is making sure that if you squint your eyes, this whole thing is gonna be very similar to neutral 50% gray. So if I create a box in here, let's just lower the width by half. Whoops, forgot to change the color. Let's set it to 50%. Put it on the side, and it looks nothing like what I just said. Okay, so that means I'm not very successful with what I'm saying myself, or perhaps I wanted a darker darker paper texture. Yeah, I'm squinting my eyes as much as I can and it's still very dark. Okay, this does not apply, but actually let's do it. Let's go to Effect, Color Correction, Curves, and just fix it up really quickly. So if you're wearing glasses, this would be a good time to take them off. You can alternatively just blur this texture. But this is approximately the same. I mean, we can verify it by applying just a very strong fast blur on it with repeat edge pixels, and we can see that the colors are pretty close. Now there's a bit of a gradient going on the texture. Apparently it was photographed this way, but when you have the result that's very close to neutral gray overall, applying it with overlay mode will only make the darker bits darken things and lighter things lighten them. If I apply gray solid with overlay, whoops, not soft light, overlay, you can see it does absolutely nothing. I turn it on and off. So neutral gray is, well, neutral, and all the other colors basically apply texture. So this is actually pretty good. So it doesn't really change our overall color fill, but introduces all these brighter and darker areas. Now, for some reason, I had it made differently, and I think it's just something that worked for me, so I'm gonna revert it there. Scale it up a little bit so that it fills the whole screen. And okay, here's our animation. Now these coins don't look very realistic, so let's just add some simple drop shadow underneath them. Let's add a drop shadow. That's way too strong. Let's make it 35 maybe. Yup. Layer styles, copy, paste them to the other coins. Alright. So that's starting to look fairly believable. Let's just animate it. And if you see a bit of tearing, that's because we're previewing right now. It should fix itself up as soon as it renders, or not. Maybe that's because of the recording software. Let's try it again. Multiprocessing. How nice. Okay, I have no bloody idea what's going on right now. This is really, really weird. I probably moved my stop motion layer somewhere. Let's see. Yep. Okay. So I have my stop motion adjustment layer, and it's been only affecting a portion of the screen, so I just need to go to position and reset it. Okay, now it's back in place. Yeah, that's my style. Blame the multiprocessing on my own errors. Alright, so we have our objects moving through, wiggling a bit, changing their rotation, just as we wanted. We can even increase that shift position to, let's say, 50, just to make a bit more of randomness. Okay, now let's do the camera thing. So I'm gonna create one more adjustment layer, and again I need to follow the naming, so let's see. QubaHQ. So this is QubaHQ glitch camera. That should be the name. QubaHQ glitch camera. And since our frame limiter is on stop motion, we want to put it underneath and apply glitch camera to it. There we go. So another set of controls to play with. Again, we're gonna hide everything that's automatic, so hide the transform, hide the position, rotation, wiggle, and brightness contrast. And we have a pretty much standard set of controls. So we have the flicker amount. Let's set it to 10. We have camera shake. Let's set it to 10 as well. And camera rotation. Let's set it to 2. And you can see that as we turn it around, we're getting some parts of the image that were previously outside of the screen, and that's why we have the compensation zoom, so we can zoom the footage just a tiny bit to compensate for those errors. I think 5% should be fine. And if we play it back right now, we can see that we introduced a lot of imperfections to the motion of the camera, to the exposure of the separate photos, and it's starting to look more and more like something that was done in stop motion. Pretty nice. And of course, all these expressions work together. The only thing you must remember is you cannot apply glitch camera without stop motion. It's not going to work, it's gonna break. This is a very simple example, right? So, I mean, we have 5 coins going around. Let's have a look at that sample file that's attached to the project, and you can see how easy it is to apply this effect on really complex animations. So let's load up our project file. Open project. We don't need to save this. And this sits in your downloaded zip. QubaHQ stop motion. Open it up. It's gonna pop out the info that it's made in CS3. Here's your proof. And okay, this is our animation unglitched. You can see that all I have in here is a bunch of coins, some text animators, paper texture, etc. And this is how it would look if it's animated without the stop motion kit. Now, it's gonna take a while to render, so I'm just gonna pause in here and start in a moment. Okay, so it's rendered. Let's have a look. So you can see everything is animated very smooth. There is no glitching whatsoever. Well, a little bit on this because I use text animators for that. But all in all, you can see very smooth, not very believable animation. Let's glitch it up. Alright? I'm gonna make a copy of this just to make sure I don't destroy anything. Maybe make it a bit smaller. Come to some spot where I see the coins moving and start applying the kit. So first of all, adjustment layer, QubaHQ stop motion. QubaHQ stop motion. Boom. I can immediately create the other one. QubaHQ glitch camera. Put it underneath. Stop motion, needs stop motion applied. Double click. Glitch camera. Double click. Alright. We can already actually apply some glitches to the camera and see how it will look before we touch any of the elements. Let's introduce some flicker, a bit less this time, maybe 7 on rotation, 7 on shake, 1 on rotation, and compensation zoom. Again, I'm gonna add 5 just to be on the safe side. Actually, I don't need 5, probably 3 would be enough. Okay, and let's preview it. Yep, so I paused the video a little bit, pre-rendered it, and this is what it looks like with just the camera glitch, and it already looks much more believable. There are still some problems though. Maybe not so much in this part, but if you look at this, I mean, all the coins are perfectly aligned, all of them facing exactly the same direction. The lower frame rate helps the animation, but still it's not quite where I want it to be. So let's quickly fix that thing. So I already applied freeze frame on all the sequences of the coins. If I just look at the keyframes, you can see that I have time remapping on the first frame. So when applying the what is it called, glitch time, I have to make sure I'm aligned with the same place where I already have the keyframe. Otherwise it's going to read this keyframe and then apply another one at whatever time I applied the effect, and it's not gonna look very good as it suddenly all the coins jump. So I'm going to frame 0, selecting all the coins and just double clicking glitch time. Okay, so that's done, and you can already see, and just hide the helpers, that right now every coin has its own rotation. Yes, some of them are rotated the same way, but it's all due to the randomness. So that's the first step of the way. Let's look at the stop motion preset and add a bit of shift to the frames. Let's say 3 frames should be enough. Now it's not gonna do anything in here, but as they are moving really fast, if I zero it out, nothing happens. Let's try again. Okay, I guess I need to adjust my minimum speed and maximum speed. Yep. Right now, as they're moving fast, change of frame kicks in. I think 20 was the setting I used for the preview. So this is the first thing. We animated the additional rotation on the coins. Now let's add extra motion to everything. So starting with the node through all the coins, and I don't need to do anything to the stop motion kit. Just go to glitch position, double click that, and let's go to the controller and shift position by, let's say, 50, and you can see them move about. And finally the node, which is this little piece of paper that flies in. Let's apply glitch rotation, not randomize, because I already have it animated the way I wanted it to, so it rotates a little bit. But if I add glitch rotation on top and then increase my shift rotation to, let's say, 10 degrees, it's gonna add just a little bit of extra motion to it. And that's pretty much it. This is all you have to do. You do your animation without the preset, make sure it looks good, make sure the objects don't overlap and there is enough space for randomness between them, and then couple of clicks and you're done. let's quickly preview this. I'll again have to pause the video because unfortunately with all those settings on and the expressions the render slows down, but I'll see you on the other side in just a moment. Okay, and it's almost finished rendering right now, and from what I could tell in the slow render motion, it looked just fine. Let's have a look. There we go. Yeah, so let's just crop it in here and preview this part. And you can see we added a whole bunch of random motion, rotations, and other crap to our animation, and it really starts looking believable. Now, if you're not happy with the result, you have tons of settings you can tweak. I would probably, if I were doing it as a commercial again, I would probably increase the flicker a little bit more and perhaps add a bit of grain on top to give it a bit more of a photographic look. But other than that, I'm really happy with it. I especially like how the little piece of paper moves. It really does not look computer animated at all. And all that was done in, what, a minute? 2? Stop motion kit from QubaHQ. Enjoy. Please make sure to post any projects you may do using this kit. I'm really curious to see what the community does with the tools I supply. And let's hope the wait for the next tutorial is not gonna take quite as long as the last time. For QubaHQ, I'm Kuba Michalski, and I'll see you next time.